Hey, what's going on everyone? In this review, we'll be looking at the Earth Federation's first mass-produced mobile suit, the Master Grade RGM-79 GM version 2.0. Yeah, we're looking at the original, not the sniper, the striker, or whatever. This is the classic grunt suit from the original anime series. I'll be reviewing this Master Grade model kit in 4 categories: the build, appearance, articulation, and gimmicks. I'll be giving each a score from 1 to 5, so at the end we can tally it all up for an average score. Hopefully this review will help you decide if you should pick up this model kit. Alright, now let's jump right into this build. This model kit came out towards the end of what I unofficially call the 2.0 era of Master Grades, starting around late 2005 with the Zeta 2.0s, going all the way to late 2010 around the Unicorn OVA version and the Musha Mark II. The kits from this time period usually have amazing inner frames, great part separation, and oftentimes a more anime-accurate appearance, and this GM 2.0 doesn't disappoint. Coming out in February of 2009, it has all the hallmarks of a great 2.0 kit. The inner frame here is just amazing, being essentially a clone of the already great ARC 78-2 version 2.0, which came out less than a year beforehand. Of course, seeing how the GM was canonically based off the Gundam anyways, it makes perfect sense. Anyway, there are tons of both molded in details and moving pistons to paint up in silver, gold, or red. Having said that, the complexity of this frame can be a little too much for first-time builders. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's nothing like a Zeta or Unicorn Gundam, but I'd still say it could be a little bit of a challenge for beginners. Moving on to the armor, the part separation here is just amazing. Really, there's no need for stickers or paint here. Everything is pre-molded in the correct color. Even the weapons come in their anime-accurate pure white. I have a feeling if this kit came out a few years earlier, they all would have been the same teal color as the armor. There are also absolutely no screws, no need for glue, and no mandatory detailing. You can literally build this guy straight out of the box and have an amazing looking build. I really only have 2 nitpicks here. The first being the color of this visor. While it looks green on its own, once you put it over the inner frame, the green becomes kinda hard to notice. I would have liked it to be a bit darker really, but then again that's what paint's for, right? My second nitpick is the shallowness of some of these tick marks. Yeah, despite this kit being pretty anime accurate, there are a few little tick marks and panel lines. Unfortunately they're really shallow, so panel lining ink will fade up in no time. Your only option is to paint, and even then, unless you top coat them, they'll scrape off pretty quickly. So what can I say about this build? It's amazing. It's everything I want in a model kit. A complex inner frame with tons of details, great armor separation, and my only nitpicks being really easy to fix. All in all, it's a pretty perfect build, deserving a 5 out of 5. Again though, I'd say a beginner might want to wait 2 or 3 kits before jumping in here. This frame can be a little bit technical. Now let's take a look over his appearance. Being a 2.0 Master Grade, this kit goes for a more anime-accurate look, and it just nails it. This GM looks exactly like he does in the anime. First off, the colors are amazing. I love how Bandai really committed to this teal base color, and it really pops. The red and yellow are also extremely nice, being a nice faded color. It really looks like the anime palette. The weapons also come in their anime-accurate white, which goes a long way in keeping this color palette interesting. The proportions are also great. It's pretty slimmed up, which would be a major negative, but because of the lack of panel lines, it doesn't really look too modernized. Having said that, the head and the feet are a little on the small side. It's nothing too crazy, but once you notice it, it can be a little hard to forget about. You get 2 sheets of decals, one peel and stick and the other dry transfer. The peel and stick is usually just boring caution signs, but on this kit, over half of the sheet is dedicated to unique faction symbols. The dry transfers are a bit more standard, but still great. You get all the unit numbers you could ask for, so of course you could buy a few of these kits and make your own little team of GMs. There really isn't much more I can say about the appearance. It's overall just really solid. The colors are all spot on and the decals are really interesting. And the proportions, while not 100% perfect, are still really great. I'll give the appearance another perfect 5 out of 5. It's probably the best looking original GM kit out there. Okay, now let's see how his articulation fares. As always, let's start at the feet. There are 2 hinges in each foot that give you some pretty great movement. Despite the double ball joint in the ankle, you don't really get anything too crazy. Still, he can find solid footing most of the time. This heel piece can also pop off if you're not careful. The knees have a very solid 180-degree bend. Despite the armor not moving, there are some pistons in the legs that do. The hips feature that newer style swivel mounts, so you get all the kicks, splits, and spins you want. However, the skirts can kinda get in the way and they'll often pop off. The skirts themselves have some great movement. Not as much as the RX-78 II, but they stay on a little bit better. But of course that's not saying too much. You also get an extra set of front skirts that are more separated. This is a really nice touch that goes a long way in letting you make this kit your own. They also allow for much better leg movement, which is great for people that love posing their kits. Since there's a pseudo core block in the chest, you're fairly limited here. There are a few swivels, but they're pretty restricted. You also don't get much in terms of spins. The shoulders have an amazing pop out, which means he can shoot his gun in any direction you want. This red shoulder armor does have a tendency to pop off, but it's nothing some glue can't fix. You also get a 360-degree spin from the shoulder, and the upper arm has a 360-degree spin as well. The arm has almost a 180-degree bend. It's just barely held back by the shoulder armor. Like the legs, there's some great moving pistons here too. The wrists are on the usual ball joints, and the hands themselves have pseudo-independent fingers. While there is the usual trigger finger split, each finger has an independent joint as well. There are also pegs, which is just fantastic. Lastly, the head has 2 ball joints, but because of the neck size, it's actually a little restricted. The articulation of this kit is pretty amazing. The optional skirt armor is also a really nice touch. However, it's lacking a tiny bit in the ankles, chest, and neck. There are also a few pieces that have a tendency to pop off. Still, I'll give the articulation a near perfect 4.5 out of 5. These are relatively small problems and they don't really get in the way of all the cool poses this guy can do. Lastly, let's take a look over these gimmicks. First up is his beam spray gun. It's essentially a weaker version of the usual Gundam rifle. You'd think that would mean this gun would be a simpler build, but there's actually some great part separation here. He can also hold the gun up no problem because of both the pegs in the hands and the great articulation of the fingers. Next is the token beam saber. Because it reuses runners from the Gundam 2.0, you actually get 2 beam sabers and handles. I know this wasn't intentional, but it really gives you more options to play with. Despite the GM in the anime only having a single beam saber, you can actually store both handles in here. His other major weapon is his Hyper Bazooka. It's another reuse from the Gundam 2.0, which means it's pretty great. He can hold the cannon really easily too because the handle is movable. Lastly, you get the standard Gundam shield. Again, straight copy from the Gundam 2.0. It also plugs in pretty easily into this hole in the arm called a hard point. These holes are actually found on both arms and the backpack, so you can attach the shield on either arm and he can carry it on his backpack as well. The bazooka can also be stored on these hard points, meaning you can actually have this guy fully loaded. Both beam sabers in the backpack, the spray gun in the right hand, shield in the left, and the bazooka plugged into the back. It looks kind of funny this way, but I like it. Alright, the gimmicks on this kit are exactly what I'd want from a standard GM kit. It's easy to get wrapped up in the different arsenals of all the GM variants, but this kit seems to be focusing solely on the original anime's take on the GM, and it does it perfectly. I'll give the gimmicks yet another 5 out of 5. While it isn't the largest arsenal, it's everything you'd expect, and it all works perfectly. Now it's time to wrap this all up for an average score. The build was a perfect 5 out of 5. It's pretty much everything you could ask for from a Master Grade GM kit. The appearance was another 5 out of 5. This is probably the best looking GM in model kit form. The articulation was a 4.5 out of 5. He can hit almost any pose you could think of, but there are a few minor issues. And the gimmicks received a third 5 out of 5. He comes with all the weapons you'd expect and each one is done perfectly. Alright, tallying all that up, dividing and of course rounding, this kit receives a 4.9 out of 5, but more accurately it receives a 97.5%. Man, that's one of the highest scores I think I've ever given. It seems weird too, considering I've reviewed some really hefty kits, and this is just some small grunt suit that reuses parts from a much more popular kit. But still, this kit just nails everything it sets out to do, and on top of that it's a pretty cheap buy with a few options for customization. I highly recommend this kit to just about anyone interested in GMs, or really Master Grades in general for that matter. Alright, feel free to ask any questions you have about this kit in the comments, or just to recommend more kits for me to review. I'm always looking for something new to build. I also started an Instagram recently. I'm not really sure how it works, but I'm learning, so there's a link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.